Welcome back. As we move into these last few chapters of Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, we're picking up with chapters 14 and 15 on gender and sexuality, and especially on the gender chapter and the questions around women and feminism. It may seem odd for us two characters to be sitting here talking about that, but I think it's consistent with the whole ethic of his book, which is that racism is a subject that should be equally important to white people as Black people, and that it's important for white people to be talking about racism even more so perhaps than Black people. And so too, it is important for men to be grappling with issues of gender and feminism and how they intersect with racism. So we're going to give that a whirl to get this conversation started. And in question one, Ibram in these two chapters actually talks about the intersectionality of sexism and racism. And what I understand that to mean is he's talked about how sexism and racism play off of each other and reinforce each other in ways that are very detrimental to both Black and white women, and as he also points out, end up boomeranging back and being detrimental to men as well. For example, Ibram says sexist notions of, quote, real women as weak and racist notions of white women as the idealized woman intersect to produce the gender racist idea that the pinnacle of womanhood is the weak white woman. This is the gender racism that causes millions of men, he says, and women to hate the strong white woman running for president in 2016, Hillary Clinton. I thought, now I know lots of people had issues with Hillary Clinton, but looking at it through this lens was kind of a light bulb moment for me, thinking about how does our culture respond to white women in charge? And how much did that affect that election? And I know that, long history of the Clintons and that sort of thing, but one has to believe that a layer of how our culture responded to Hillary Clinton was, who does she think she is?
Right.
Thinking she can run this country, right? You have any thoughts on that? Or
I think the same thing about Elizabeth Warren in this last little race. I felt like there were times when she got this image of being too in your face.
Too strong.
Too strong. Mm-hmm. And but she was right on all the things she was saying. But so many times men don't want to hear from a woman's perspective. They're not strong enough. But when you were reading that, I kept thinking about this. There used to be this phenomenon of when a white woman comes up missing or is in peril, it leads the evening news, and it is the most important thing. But when a Black girl comes up missing or in peril, it's kind of it seems as if it's made a lower priority. And so there's always these dynamics, but what Dr. Kendi is talking about is this intersection of race and gender and women. And so he refers to an old adage that Black women are slaves of slaves. So that even as there are, whatever the cultural dynamics were during times of slavery, the woman slave was still subservient to the male slave. So that even in that rung, she's at the very, very, very low end. And so what we've seen through time is that Black women are probably the least considered in our culture. Certainly the most blamed when you think about these thoughts of welfare mothers or welfare women. It's always these images of Black women unemployed, having lots of babies, when the data doesn't really support that. But we always have these images of these poor Black welfare mothers. That may not always be the most people that are on welfare, but that's what we hear. So then the other thing that I got out of this chapter was I never concerned myself with the feminist movement. Familiar with it. I know the history of it, but I never identified as being part of it. And what Dr. Kendi is saying is that to be an anti-racist is to be a feminist as well, because we're talking about equality for all groups. So I should be concerned with, are women getting an equal shake? Are gays getting an equal shake? Are Latinx, the communities that we don't belong in, we still have to be concerned with their fair treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really thought of myself as a feminist, but I'm a feminist.
Good for you. So that's progress.
Right.
Another interesting concept he talked about is patriarchal women, by which I believe he means women who have internalized the notion that women shouldn't be in charge and therefore hate women who are in charge or won't vote for women as candidates. And then, of course, in the chapter on sexuality, there are gay people, gay men, who despise feminine gay men or butch women, masculine women. So I think he's trying to sensitize us to how all of this just gets layered on layered. And if you are a masculine acting Black lesbian woman, boy,
you're catching it.
The layers of discrimination that you have to fight in life, incredible.
Right. And what this book is challenging us to do is to see all of that, that we might, almost lifting the veil, to see things that you might not have paid.
And recognize that as two masculine acting, I presume.
Right. Best we can.
As two masculine acting gay men, and me on top of that being white, that we do have in the hierarchy of our culture, we have privileges, and we need to face that, and we need to be part of unpacking that.
To own that privilege. I have had to deal with, when we talked about colorism and how light-skinned Blacks have privilege over dark-skinned Blacks, to own that and say, oh, yes, I've experienced that. And as a masculine acting gay man, there is a certain level of privilege, but it's all performative. I thought that chapter was fascinating when he talked about, he did not know that there were gay men who were masculine who actually preferred feminine men as partners. Just oblivious to the whole existence of those prejudices and preferences, I guess, and how it made him homophobic, and he didn't think that he was actually homophobic. It's just being aware of all those things. I think that's the first step.
So, a lot here to unpack. Let's talk.